It was the kind of day every girl dreams of. 26-year-old Estrella Carrera smiled brightly as she stood in her shimmering silver wedding dress, ready to marry the love of her life, Arnoldo Jimenez, in a ceremony at Chicago City Hall in May 11, 2012. The couple was surrounded by friends and family. The vows were exchanged, the celebrations had begun. They all dined together before heading to a nightclub to continue the festivities. They left the club in the early hours of May 12th, embarking on what was supposed to be the beginning of their new life together. But within hours, after exchanging vows, she was found dead in the bathtub of her Burbank, Illinois apartment, still wearing her shimmering silver wedding dress. Her husband, gone. No goodbyes, no explanations. What transpired in those early morning hours after the reception? How does a joyous wedding night turn into a tragic crime scene? And how did the man she chose to spend her life with become the prime suspect in her untimely death? This is the haunting story of Estrella Carrera's murder and the decade-long search for justice that followed. What led to Estrella's tragic end? Could anything have been done to prevent this senseless act? Join us as we delve into the details of this heartbreaking case. Estrella Carrera was more than just a bride. She was a devoted mother to 2 young children, a beloved daughter, and a friend who could light up any room. Those who knew her described her as someone full of life, with dreams of building a bright and stable future for her family. Balancing her role as a mother and her aspirations, Estrella worked tirelessly to provide for her children, hoping for a life of happiness and security. But everything changed when she met Arnoldo Jimenez. What began as a whirlwind romance quickly turned into something more serious. Estrella saw Arnoldo as the man who could complete her family. He was charming and attentive, at least in the beginning. The couple moved quickly, leading to their wedding day on May 11, 2012. Arnoldo Jimenez, however, carried a darker past. Behind the charm lay a history of violent behavior and controlling tendencies. According to those who knew him, Arnoldo could be hot-tempered, unpredictable, and possessive. There were troubling signs, but Estrella seemed determined to believe in their future together. Despite the growing red flags, no one could have imagined how tragically their story would end. Estrella's loved ones will soon learn that the man she trusted most was capable of unthinkable violence. May 11, 2012, started like a dream for Estrella Carrera. After an intimate wedding at City Hall, she and her husband, Arnoldo Jimenez, celebrated with their loved ones late into the night. To those in attendance, it seemed like the perfect beginning to a new chapter in Estrella's life. It was a joyous occasion, filled with music, laughter, and promises of a bright future. By 4 a.m., Estrella and Arnoldo were last seen leaving a Chicago nightclub together. They drove back to Estrella's apartment in Burbank, Illinois. That was the last time anyone saw Estrella alive. In the early hours of May 12th, neighbors reported hearing an argument coming from Estrella's apartment. The shouting escalated, following by loud thuds, and then nothing but silence. Hours passed. No one in the apartment building saw Estrella leave. When she failed to show up for a scheduled family gathering later that day, her loved ones became worried. Calls went unanswered, prompting her family to call the police. In the morning of May 13, 2012, 2 days after the wedding, police entered Estrella Carrera's apartment in Burbank, Illinois, and discovered a scene no one could have expected. Estrella, a vibrant young mother of 2, was found brutally murdered. The sight was both tragic and eerie. Her body lay lifeless in a blood-filled bathtub, still wearing her wedding dress, which was stained with her blood, the dress that was once a symbol of hope and joy, now a haunting symbol of a promise that would never be fulfilled. Just hours earlier, she had been celebrating a milestone she hoped would mark a new beginning. Investigators determined she had been brutally stabbed multiple times, likely in the early hours of the previous morning. As the investigation unfolded, detectives began piecing together the events that led to Estrella Carrera's tragic death. Neighbors who lived near Estrella's apartment had reported hearing a loud and violent argument in the early morning hours of May 12th, shortly after she and Arnoldo Jimenez had returned from the nightclub. Inside the apartment, there were no signs of forced entry. Investigators found evidence of a struggle with no one other than one person, the person who had promised to love and protect her husband, Arnoldo Jimenez. Items were knocked over, and traces of blood were discovered on the walls leading to the bathroom. It was clear that Estrella had fought for her life. Detectives also spoke with friends and family who had attended the wedding celebration. Several witnesses mentioned that the night was festive, but that tension began to build between the newlyweds as the evening wore on, and that Arnoldo had displayed signs of agitation during the reception and nightclub visit. A few recalled him arguing with Estrella, though no one had expected violence to follow. Meanwhile, police tracked Arnoldo's black Maserati, which was last seen near Estrella's apartment around the time of the murder. Days later, the car was found abandoned in a nearby parking lot. Arnoldo himself had vanished without a trace. He hadn't shown up to work, his phone was disconnected, and his family was giving conflicting accounts of his whereabouts. When questioned, Arnoldo's family revealed a chilling detail. Hours after Estrella's death, Arnoldo had allegedly called his brother, admitting to the crime. According to reports, he said, "I killed her. She wouldn't stop disrespecting me." This confession deepened the suspicion that Estrella's murder stemmed from a sudden violent outburst, possibly triggered by jealousy or a need for control. Police instantly identified Arnoldo Jimenez as the prime suspect. But what exactly caused this argument to escalate to such a brutal crime? Some investigators speculated that Arnoldo had long harbored controlling tendencies. Others believed the couple's relationship had reached a breaking point that night, leading to an explosive confrontation. With Arnoldo on the run, investigators faced a major obstacle. It was suspected that he had fled across state lines or even out of the country. The U.S. Marshals Service joined the manhunt, focusing their efforts near the U.S.-Mexico border. This wasn't going to be an easy case. With no confirmed sightings and few leads, authorities feared that Arnoldo might disappear permanently into the vast networks of international hiding places. But investigators weren't giving up. As the search intensified, they continued to uncover more about Arnoldo's life and the secrets he was desperate to keep hidden. Would he be found before he disappeared forever? Authorities were left with one question: how do you catch a man who has already vanished without a trace? The manhunt had only just begun, and what detectives would discover next would leave both them and Estrella's family stunned. Authorities will soon discover a trail of clues leading directly to him. Following Estrella Carrera's murder, authorities were certain that Arnoldo Jimenez had fled the country. Surveillance footage and phone records indicated that he crossed state lines, potentially heading toward Mexico. Despite intense efforts to track him, Arnoldo seemed to vanish, slipping past law enforcement like a ghost. The U.S. Marshals Service worked tirelessly to keep the case alive. Collaborating with Mexican authorities, they monitored potential safe houses and relatives, hoping that Arnoldo would eventually make a mistake. Over time, however, the leads dwindled. Years passed with no confirmed sightings. Arnoldo became one of the most wanted fugitives, but the case remained cold. Investigators feared he had established a new life somewhere far from the reach of law enforcement. For Estrella's family, it was an agonizing wait with no end in sight. But in a dramatic turn of events, nearly 13 years after the murder, the breakthrough finally came. Authorities received a tip about Arnoldo's location in Mexico. Working with local police, the U.S. Marshals coordinated his capture. Arnoldo Jimenez was arrested without incident and extradited to the United States to face justice. During the trial, prosecutors laid out the harrowing details of Estrella's final moments. Witnesses testified about Arnoldo's controlling behavior, the violent argument heard by neighbors, and the damning confession he made to his brother. Arnoldo's defense attempted to argue for a lesser charge, but the evidence was overwhelming. Arnoldo Jimenez was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For Estrella's loved ones, the verdict brought a sense of justice, but it could never erase the pain of her loss. "We finally have justice for Estrella," her sister said, "but no sentence will ever bring her back to her children, to us." The case serves as a stark reminder of the hidden dangers within abusive relationships and the long-lasting impact of violence on families. It took over a decade, but the justice system finally caught up with Arnoldo Jimenez. For those left behind, the memories of that fateful night will never fade. Estrella Carrera's death sent shockwaves through her family and the community. Her children, who were too young to understand the tragedy, were left to grow up without their mother. Family members spoke of the enduring pain, knowing that Estrella's life was taken in an act of violence from the person she trusted most. For many, Estrella's story became a haunting reminder of the hidden dangers within toxic relationships. Her case exposed how quickly domestic violence can escalate to tragedy, often without warning. Advocates used her story to raise awareness about the importance of recognizing the red flags, possessiveness, control, and emotional abuse that often precede physical violence. Experts emphasize the need to support victims before it's too late. They urge families and friends to speak up when they see the warning signs. Domestic violence thrives in silence, and early intervention can be the difference between life and death. Sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who pose the greatest danger. Estrella's story is not just a tragedy, it is a warning and a call to action. We must listen, watch, and protect those we love. Because for too many, the silence around domestic violence is deadly. Now, I want to hear from you. What do you think about this case? Could Estrella's murder have been prevented if more attention had been paid to the warning signs? Let me know your thoughts, insights, or personal experiences in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. If you found this story compelling, please support the channel by liking this video and subscribing for more in-depth true crime stories. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Ready for more gripping cases? Watch out for more of our videos, where we explore more shocking true crimes that will leave you speechless. Thank you for watching, and remember to stay safe.